podcast. Hell yeah, brother. Overload, brother. Beats by @Smoke M2D6.
Welcome to a special Seattle Overload. I keep saying the special, but this one is very special because we're veering away from the evil quarterbacks to the much more preferable defensive side of the football, and also the edge rushers, the guys responsible for sacking the quarterback. Obviously, the Seahawks have a bit of a hole in this area. They had a hole last year, entering the year, and then lo and behold, this year they cut to Carlos Dunlap now. They've added some guys, but the draft class is stocked full of them. So we're going to look at that. And I say we're because we have Ty Dane Gonzalez, our producer, to keep us right. And we have Griffin, the edge maestro, you could say. Lads, Ty, firstly, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well, Matty. I'm looking forward to talking about this class. A lot of really interesting names here.
3 a.m. and time for some edge talk and some coffee. And Griffin?
Doing fine. Also excited. I think edges they're the most fun to watch pre-draft. I think that's just like the just the lowest drama. Just you get to watch guys sack quarterbacks. You know, easiest to pour through, I think.
Well, not even that. Like, I mean, obviously you miss on edges, right?
Right. I don't mean like easy to eval per se.
No, but I do think like we'll get to some of the guys, obviously, but sometimes you just plug it in, and to me, edge always carries over. It's so obvious. Oh, this guy has it. Like this guy can bend. This guy has get off. This guy can get to the quarterback. Whereas like corner, I'm spending ages trying to find a rep of this guy pressing, and he's pressed once and he's using a different technique to what Seattle likes, and he's kind of soft, but maybe he's not soft. Whereas it's a bit more hazy in that instance. As a cornerback lover, that's a bit more frustrating. But anyway,
it's when you're trying to narrow the snaps that will translate, it's like okay, it's 3rd and 6. That's all you need to look for, right? And you know what I mean? So it's just a lot easier to find the snaps that tell you whether a guy is good or not.
So Seattle, they did bring in, they made one edge addition, which was Uchenna Nwosu, who I've just Googled, and he's described as an American football spieler. So Microsoft Bing, which for some reason I'm using, clearly thinks I'm German. But that was an interesting ad because not just in the edge group, but also inside linebacker. Where else? Cornerback as well. They've kind of brought in the guys of Sean Desai and the people who kind of know the scheme. But the Nwosu signing was actually didn't it work out as the most expensive edge contract handed out to an outside free agent from the Seahawks, which shows the last time they actually paid an outside edge because the cap has changed. They didn't pay.
Isn't that crazy, by the way? And it's only a $10.5 million. And that's the highest that they have given out in terms of APY. In 12 years.
Now the additional irony is that I think their best pass rushers have been acquired veterans, though, in spite of it, like Bennett, Averill, Chris Clemens. The best pass rusher they've drafted is probably Clark, and then followed by Irvin, and unless I'm blanking on somebody, I think that's it. The best interior pass rusher they've drafted has been Quentin Jefferson, I think.
Well, they technically drafted Michael Bennett, right?
They undrafted him. He went
undrafted.
They signed him. Yeah.
No, you're right. So that's credit to. Anyway, so like you said, they've filled out all these spots, and going into this draft, if a roster pre-draft can tip or signal who they plan to target in the draft, then we have lots of reasons to think that they're going to go crazy on edge. They got day 1 options, day 2, and day 3 options.
So, but real quick before that, what did you think of Nwosu? Because he 5 sacks in 2021, 40 pressures per PFF, 13% pressure percentage per Sports Info Solutions, which is higher than Hassan Reddick, Von Miller. You know, guys who got real big paydays this free agency cycle. And 2018 second round pick from out of USC for the Chargers. They obviously traded for Khalil Mack, which kind of explains their decision not to re-sign him. His, he's only turning 26 years old in December. He's the guy to me who kind of fits this new mold of you can put him opposite Darrell Taylor running base bear. And yeah, he got $10.5 million guaranteed, which means it's not a massive payday. It's only a 2-year deal, so he can kind of develop a bit more. But yeah, what did you see from his tape rather than production?
Yeah, so going into free agency, I don't even think I was aware that he was a free agent. So when Seattle, like, it was announced and there was no like prior interest reported, it was just the deal happened. I was like, wait, what? Like Uchenna, I mean, I know who he is, but like I didn't know he was a free agent even. But after watching him, like, long story short, after watching him, it's one of those cases where like a free agent signed for like exactly what you think they should sign for. It wasn't like, oh, they got a great deal, but it wasn't an overpay at the same time. It was just like, hey, that's a $10 million per year edge rusher who is a great scheme fit, and that's what they look like. So like the way I characterize him is he's a legitimate number 2 edge. He's not good enough to be a team's best edge rusher. If you want to have a good edge rush and he's on your team, then he's probably your second best edge rusher, maybe tied for third if you've got another guy equivalent to him, because you need an ensemble. You can't just have 2 guys. If you want to have your pass rush be difference making. So they clearly identify Taylor as their number 1 going forward, and they've raised their floor considerably by bringing him in. They cut Dunlap. There was a room, or John Schneider said they could bring him back probably after the draft is when that makes sense. Probably a reaction to see how the draft goes. But yeah, he gets you number 2 production, and that's like, the sacks are a funky stat, right? So he averages like 5 to 6 sacks a year, which is fine. The pressure rates are pretty high. I mean, they're way up there. He's clustered with a lot of good edge rushers. Now, granted, their numbers are going to be decreased by the fact that the protection plans are being devoted to them. So it's him having a 13.3 pressure percentage and Von Miller having a 13.6 pressure percentage does not mean that he is as impactful as Von Miller, right? Even if you're not looking at sacks. So,
well, and also a lot of his production from last year came in the second half too. I think it was week 10 onwards. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think also like his PFF pass rush grade was like crazy good in the second half of the season, right? But yeah, so in watching him, like, it's 3rd and 5, it's 3rd and 6, whatever, or it's 2nd and 10, and they're in a formation where they pass out of it whatever percent of the time, and they know it's going to be a pass. I mean, he's going to get good edge burn. He stresses tackles with get off and speed. He's not the fastest guy though. He's not the bendiest guy, but he has bend. I think he has decent speed to power, and he's got like all the moves. I mean, the knockdown moves are there. He didn't have a lot coming out. Like, he was a project coming out of USC, and like he's going into year 5 now, and he has developed. And he was a young rookie. He was like 20 or 21. I think he was 20, and so now he's, did he just turn 25? Or
like I said, he turns 26 in December. So yeah, okay. He's pretty young still.
So yeah, so it just kind of shows that he's been on a development track. He's had pretty steady production the past 2-3 years. So he's a good pass rusher. I mean, if you list down all his traits, you wouldn't say he has a single great trait. He just has 3 or 4 good ones. And that's how you get a, oh, this guy can be your second best pass rusher, and you can feel good about that. So, and then additionally, with Seattle moving to 3-4, like you said, or they have moved to 3-4, but they really leaned into the idea of this past year where they want to hide who the 4th rusher is, like classic 3-4 teams are. So where you interchange who's the 7th dropper and who's the 4th rusher, because you're not going to rush both of them all the time. Otherwise, your rush 5 percentage would be crazy, and you're only going to do that 20 to 30% of the time. And even then, it's not both edges that are rushing. When you are rushing 5, sometimes it's a linebacker or a cornerback or and so forth, an inside linebacker, that is. So on
that point, what I'd say to that is you're right. Obviously, the Von Millers of the world do command more attention, but with this being the base plan of having Taylor opposite Nwosu and largely playing bare fronts where you have these 5 guys down at the line of scrimmage and, Taylor manning one edge and Nwosu the other, that kind of look obviously is going to garner a very predictable protection call. Now, teams can get into like heavier pass protection sets, like 7-man pass protection, but then you've done your job. But ultimately, Nwosu's going to have a one-on-one, and Taylor's going to have a one-on-one if you're showing those looks most of the time, because teams will either go big on big, or they can full slide it, like the Cardinals do that quite a bit, especially when going up tempo. But then that's when you work in the pressure stuff to exploit that. But anyway, to that point with the bare transition, Nwosu, and they cut Benson Mayowa, Nwosu will get more favorable protection schemes along with Taylor. To me, it's kind of odd that 2021 they didn't do this. Now, maybe that was Ken Norton kind of in a world where he didn't want to go too extreme, or they were trying to transition it a bit. But I guess they tried to, in the sense that Mayowa had played under Norton. Norton knew him. He actually started his career in 2013 as a Sam linebacker, which is, like much more like that kind of 3-4 vibe. But to me, this is them fully embracing that as a front office, that they're more in these 3-4 looks, and Nwosu's probably more of the dropper, in the sense that, like you said, they won't do rush 5 all the time. Like, you can't do that, but I do think they'll up it from last year. What was it last year? It was like really low, right? Like rush 5 there.
Their 5+ rate, so 5, 6, or 7 rushers or more, was it was like 21%.
Yeah,
which ranked like
so
7 or like 21st, almost around there.
So like you said, they're definitely going to have to up. Well, they definitely want to up that to, I don't know, I'd say like in the 30s, the 30 percentile range.
Well, so I mean, just looking at the other, go ahead, yeah.
But it's dependent on if they can play the tight coverage behind it and live with that. But you have to. What they didn't, I definitely feel, I got the impression that they felt they didn't establish the threat of the 5 rushing at the line of scrimmage enough. But more than that, like with Dunlap out there, and then, he wasn't a good enough dropper for teams to respect him as a dropper. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're having Mayo out there, I mean, we said he was like a fine 3, right? But like, he wasn't a good enough rusher to justify being a rusher, but also not a good enough dropper. Well, now with Nwosu and Taylor, the idea is that both of them are good enough rushers and droppers for the offense to respect them in either the pass game as a pass coverage guy, but also as a rushing threat, right, attacking the passer. Right. And so moving forward with that philosophy, I guess, like I said though, Nwosu being in that kind of that 250-ish pounds kind of range compared to Taylor, who's like 260s. I mean, I guess that kind of matters. And Taylor is a pass rusher and has like more like top end traits than Nwosu, but there's the lines are less distinct between the two.
Right. Yeah. So with Nwosu, it was important that whoever they brought in primarily was a good edge rusher, but secondly, the scheme fit, being able to drop, like you said, all that stuff, it just makes it so much easier. Their base defense, so they don't have this jigsaw puzzle that they're trying to figure out. And there was like a negative domino effect of trying to put Dunlap out there. Like the pass rush he was bringing wasn't enough. So when they drop him, then his dropping it individually isn't enough. So then you need to drop 8 more frequently to make it all work, to put him in less space. Or when you do drop him, you can only drop him to the boundaries, so that when you have to drop him, you become predictable. I mean, there's just all these issues. And if his pass rush reps were dominant, which they actually started to get like really good toward the second half of the season, and he also was dropped more, ironically, like the he even said, well, I was rushed more. That's why I got better. I'm a rhythm rusher. That literally did not happen, though. He actually was rushed less as the season went on. But it's just his results when he did rush simply improved. But if he maintained that level for the whole season, then you live with that headache, and coaches are willing to like make it all, make that jigsaw puzzle work and be willing to live with what you got to live with. But having Darrell Taylor on one side and Nwosu on the other just makes it so much easier. They don't have to think twice about Nwosu's the fourth rusher in base, and then we can drop Taylor whenever we need to, and vice versa. It makes it so much easier. But that said, one in base is probably still going to rush more than the other. And like you said, Taylor is going to be that guy. So if they're going to drop Taylor 10% of the time in base, or even 13% of the time, which is like that Von Miller range, then you're going to probably drop Nwosu anywhere from like, probably 15 to 20, 25% of the time in base. But we're just talking base defense there. When you get into nickel, they'll probably have a variety of nickel fronts, but they're probably going to try to make sure they have two hard edges, wide edges, no matter what, so that neither of them are dropping in nickel, except for like the rare, like drop 8, which they'll be doing less of. But every team drops 8 in a pinch, right? They have a package for it.
And the nickel world, we should say, the nickel world will be more 4 down looks where, technically in the past, the Sam linebackers come off the field in exchange for the 5th defensive back. But really now that'll probably be an interior defensive lineman, probably the big nose tackle like Al Woods coming out of the picture, although there is still a place for him in certain fronts. But for this point's sake, it'll be a big interior defensive lineman coming out, and the Sam linebacker will just move down to defensive end. And you might see, both Taylor and Nwosu manning both edges, but it'll be in a 4 down, even front kind of look where it looks more like a 4-3 or really like a 4-2. Right. Depends on the defensive family or defense in general. But anyway, Carroll, he said today basically what we're saying, the owners meeting, he said about how, he's always told reporters that they've been playing 3-4 personnel, but in a 4-3 defense. Obviously now it's like his days back at USC. This is me adding this. Carroll didn't say this, but his days at USC in 2006, he had Brian Cushing, Clay Matthews, and they went legit like 3-4 where you couldn't really tell the difference, and they played these same bare fronts that they're going to be basing out of now. And then Carroll added that they're just shifting their emphasis to the style of player that they're trying to get onto the outside, and that just to sort of tightly knit together what we've been talking about. And I guess if you were asked to sum up the traits of that kind of player, it would be, first of all, get off, right? And first step explosion, the speed rush, a high motor, which Nwosu is notorious for, but then also on top of the pass rush production, because we've been saying about the ability to drop, they have to look comfortable in space. Like they have to be able to move in space. And Dunlap looked a bit stiff and awkward because that ain't his recipe. And back in the day, if you're playing 21 personnel pro, I formation 2-back kind of deal, if you're dropping your weak end in that kind of look, your weak end is gonna have to drop to basically a shorter amount of space without a slot receiver out there, and it will just be 2 backs in the backfield they have to worry about primarily. Well, that's a bit different now with how spread out everything is, and again, that's why the game's moved to all these spread formations. It makes sense to have 2 lighter bodies manning each edge, right, so that you can cover down. You just have more coverage options, and it will give them more coverage versatility. But
yeah, I was just going to add, like, more to your point, like when you're being read with RPOs and stuff, you'd rather have Nwosu out in space than Benson Mayowa, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, like even run defense, like you're not asked, you're just trying to keep outside leverage on whoever the furthest blocker is, and just turn the ball back, right? You're just setting the edge, and it's not that hard of an assignment. But like if perimeter runs or end arounds, etc., sweeps, you want to be able to string things out and go make plays. I hopefully make even some tackles for loss. A lot of the depth outside linebackers for a lot of these 3-4 teams, as you go further down the depth chart, they become more raw but more athletic, and they don't necessarily ever really develop as pass rushers, but they just kind of make plays. Like the Rams have a couple of them, like I'm blanking on their names, and they typically let them go, but they tend to draft those. And we'll talk about the options in this draft that kind of mimic this, but they tend to draft those day 3 really athletic guys that are like just super underdeveloped, but they just run around and make plays out on the edge. So that's kind of another component to it. So Nwosu certainly fits that. Darrell Taylor certainly fits that, at least the running around part. So yeah.
The last thing on Nwosu is you found some really good. Well, I'm not insulting you, but they weren't really good. It was quite. It was broad, but there's only a certain way of doing it with the numbers you have. But you found his like 3rd and long pass rushing numbers, and Clint Hurt, now the defensive coordinator, but obviously the defensive line coach, he always says how, the first thing he does when looking at a pass rusher is the clear pass situation reps and like, can they pass rush? And Nwosu performed like pressure percentage wise pretty good in those like 3rd and 10, like clear passing down areas. And so if you're like, the way coaches watch tape, they don't have all the time in the world. They have like all these cut ups of, here's them in 3rd and 7 plus, or a clear passing down for Seattle would be 3rd and 4 plus most of the time. And then they'll just watch the cut up of it from like, all of the pass rush reps they've ever had at like 3rd and 4 plus. And obviously the fact that Nwosu's performed well numbers wise, but also tape wise in that area means that he's that guy for Seattle.
When it's time to pin his ears back, I mean, he's at his best when he can time his get off, because while he does have good natural first step, like it's not great, it's good. But when he can really time up the snap, when he knows he has no run indicators, it's clear pass all the way. That's when he gets tackles to like kind of panic and they kind of abandon their kick step. And then that's when, if he does get the corner, great, just with pure speed. But if he doesn't, that's where his speed to power really shows up, because the tackles are naturally off balance. And that's what those clear pass situations are, what unlocks his entire rush plan. It's only the elite guys that can read run or sit on the run and then read pass, and then they're still able to get enough speed on the tackle. It's only Von Miller and Pete Khalil Mack and Danielle Hunter that can do stuff like that, where they don't have to get the advantage right off the snap. And Nwosu has to get that advantage right off the snap to unlock his entire skill set. That said, even then, like his early down pressure rates are still good. Like they're okay, they're good. But it's when it's, you play with the filters situations where they're going to pass the ball, and Nwosu's pressure rate like climbs really high, like top 20, top 15 even some years, and he's right up there with guys that are making 1.5 to twice as much as him. So this is a good pick. The last thing I'll say about Nwosu is that while he can rush both sides, he's even better rushing off the right side. And while Darrell Taylor can rush both sides, Darrell Taylor, his skill set, his rush plan is unlocked completely on the left side. Mm-hmm. That's where he's more comfortable converting to power. It's where he's more comfortable using like knockdown moves, especially with his outside arm. Now, off the right side, he can speed rush and speed dip, inside chop to keep his pads clean and still bend toward the quarterback and look really good doing it. But on the left side, that's where you're going to see him, put his right hand into the chest plate of the tackle. And then, as they go to try to knock down his arm, he can knock it down with a quick hammer, outside move, or a double swipe or whatever off the left side. So Nwosu being predominantly a right edge guy, that means Taylor gets to be a predominantly left edge guy where he's best.
Yeah, and described himself as dominant there, didn't he?
He even said that in that mic'd up that you're referencing. Yeah, like after that cold stack week 1, he's like right away, he's like, yeah, I'm a left edge guy. So he clearly, even his own words, he's more comfortable off the left. So that's another way they're just kind of optimizing their roster given their scheme and existing players with this move. So it's good stuff.
So what about the rest of the edges on the roster? Because there aren't a ton.
Oh yeah,
right.
What is it? Alton Robinson and
Aaron Donkor.
The German. Donkor actually looked. He's so small. He's like 240, but he actually looked legitimately exciting in preseason. He was doing all sorts of stuff. He's probably like a Shaquem Griffin-esque edge rusher. Like you can't really play him too much, but he's a guy that they can put out on the edge. And even though he doesn't have supreme length, he can be one of those kind of playmakers out on the edge. He just kind of does stuff, even if it's not pass rush. It's like, oh, he did something. You play him 10, 15 snaps a game.
One of those guys like you're talking about, the kind of Rams tree having of, just an active guy lower down the depth chart who makes plays.
Right. Exactly.
He has a ton of activity. If he just has a high motor, he's fairly athletic, and he was quite busy in the preseason.
He'd be fine dropping too.
Yeah. I mean,
that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, just being able to show 5 down, and okay, he drops, but he's got a linebacker number. He kind of looks like an edge, and occasionally you send him. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right. You can, loop him in on stuff if you just get him free where contact isn't an issue, or it's just the running back. Right. So you can do things with him.
They started him off at will because I think it's like you mentioned Shaquem Griffin. I think they just start guys at will because it's more out in space than Mike, but it's teaching you, like, if you're learning will, you're learning like the whole linebacker role on the defense. Whereas if you're learning Sam, you're kind of you're asked to be like a big time edge setter in the old defense, whereas not the old defense, that's misleading, but when they're running a lot of like 4-3 with the Sam as the only guy down,
right,
in shaded fronts, and he's like asked to be the hammer in the fit. So it's requiring a lot of weight to set the edge, but also it's not sort of teaching you the other bits of like the off ball stuff as much. So I think that's why they started him out at will. But going forward, I think they'll move him to edge. It's a good timely move for him. Alton Robinson to me is kind of a weird fit now. I mean, he was last year as well. There's no reason to get rid of him because he's not actually that young anymore. But he's in his third year of football. Yeah. He's 23. Actually, that's younger than I thought. But he does turn 24 in June. The reason I thought he was older is because he was at the Senior Bowl. But he was obviously a 5th round pick. But he's just a weird kind of build in the sense that he's listed at 259 pounds, but he came into that camp heavier, his rookie camp. Then last year, and they clearly drafted him to be a speed rusher, but all of his Syracuse tape was him playing like in a 4-down system, like looking pretty good, scraping across the line of scrimmage on runs away. Occasionally he'd flash on like a pirate stunt where he's slanting into the B gap from like the C gap or the C gap from D gap and whatnot. But realistically, he never struck me much as an edge rusher. He's kind of just a try hard, do it all guy. And when they spoke about him post draft, and they were saying, "Oh, this guy's our speed, like he's a great speed rusher with shot, like this is great pick in round 5." Like, okay, you want to big up your prospect, but there's no point. Clearly, you draft him for a reason, but I didn't quite see that speed rush element, and we've never seen it really in the league. So, I mean, how do you view Alton?
Well, so in college, I can't remember. His junior year was different than his senior year, and I can't remember in which direction it was. But one of the years he did show a little more edge rush.
I think that was junior.
Okay, and then that said, his power rush year was more exciting than his speed rush year, which one it was. So, but in the NFL though, to date, if you did a cut up of his good rushes, they're outside speed path rushes though. The problem is that he's just not that fast. So what he is to me is he's a top of the arc hard corner guy, where he's in position, he gets his hips rolling toward the tackle, toward the quarterback, so that if he clears the tackle, his body language, his momentum is toward the direction of the quarterback. So like the technique is there to be a speed rusher. The problem is that he just isn't getting depth on the tackle quickly enough, and for him to capitalize on his ability to corner. So he's in a weird spot right now. So what I'm saying is, like, if he gets in the position you want to be in, where you have depth on the tackle and you're in half man, and if you corner on him, you can then flatten to the quarterback. He gets into those positions at a roughly an average of, when he gets into them, 7 to 9 yards. The problem is that by the time he corners and that his natural bend, by the time he flattens to the quarterback, he's drifting toward 9, 10, 11 yards. And quarterbacks are stepping up in the pocket. It's hard to get a sack on guys in those states. Now you do on 3rd and 10, but even then the quarterback's getting rid of the ball often enough. So you need the coverage to help you out. So his thing is he either needs to, and this might coincide with being a better scheme fit for dropping and stuff, he either needs to like shed maybe 5-10 pounds and see if he can gain any speed so that he can get position on the tackle at 6-7 yards instead of 7-8-9 yards, so that by the time he corners and flattens, he's getting to the cornerback at 8-9 yards instead of 9-10-11 yards. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just needs to win position on the tackle earlier at a more shallow depth. Otherwise, if he can't do that, then maybe gain 5-10 pounds and become a speed to power rusher and counter guy, but you can't do that in this scheme. So, I mean, you can keep him as is, and maybe he just becomes like a super, like, can manipulate sets, can shorten the corner with his feet and then corner on guys. And maybe he tries to develop that because he is really technical. I mean, he has good pass rush technique. It's just the traits aren't there. Maybe you can try to find more traits if he loses, just kind of tries to become a lighter player, more light on his feet, and see what happens there. That said, I mean, if he's your, in any hypothetical where he's your edge 4, edge 5, like, okay, cool. Like, you take that, I think, with him.
Yeah. My problem with that is you're saying if he's your edge 4, edge 5, but then with what we've said, you kind of need him to be a better dropper than he's shown he is. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't have him, you need him to be able to drop, like, for the reasons we've said. And so, I mean, yeah, you could be a rotational nickel edge, but then how are you going to develop? It's tough. I'm actually surprised he ran a 4.32 seconds short shuttle, which is an 84th percentile time amongst but that's amongst defensive linemen. Okay, that's quite misleading then. Never mind, mock draftable.
So I mean a weight loss might be coming. I think Benson Mayowa going into camp, I think he came in slightly leaner. Like, I remember that being a topic of discussion, and then like you reverse and you took that and said, well, are they going to drop him more?
Yeah.
And you were right. I didn't think they were, but you were right. I mean, I thought they were going to do the drop Sam, rush Leo thing, even in Bear, but you were right. They were doing rush Sam, rush Leo, drop Leo.
Yeah. So that's a great point. I didn't mention that, but last year they didn't quite have the cats to do it, but they did kind of start playing left and right, and they've done that benching / we're going to work out what we got in our rush group. That coincided with them just trying to disguise who the rusher was. They just didn't have the talent. Like, at the end of the day, they weren't good enough at either thing. So, but they did rather than having clear Leo, clear Sam, they really did try and just make it so it was 3-4, 2 outside linebackers, basically, with Mayowa, Robinson, Green, who he got some Baltimore sniffing around him, but I don't think he's signed anywhere yet. And Kerry Hyde.
It's been kind of weird, by the way. I thought Green. I thought Green would sign pretty quickly.
The sacks jump out. I guess the pressure rate isn't there.
Yeah.
I feel bad for him though, because
he
constantly feels like he's on the Rasheem Green constantly feels like he's on the brink of like putting it all together. The problem is he's just a tweener. He's not he's just not quite strong enough to be viable as a 3-tech rusher. And then he's just not quite fast enough, quick-footed enough to be an edge rusher, to be a true edge rusher. But he's got the technique for both of it, and he's got the smarts for both. He knows how to rush guards. He knows how to rush offensive tackles. He just doesn't quite have the traits for either.
Right.
So,
but he's still young, right? He's like 24.
Yeah, but he's been the same guy for 2 seasons now. So you just wonder can he hit another level? I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Turns 25 in May. Yeah.
I hope he does. I mean, I'm rooting for him wherever he goes, but
good luck to him. But the main thing with him is he's not really a fit with what Seattle's doing now.
He's like even less of a fit now.
Especially now they've added Shelby Harris and
Jeff.
Yeah, Quentin Jefferson. So that's kind of the inside dealt with it along with, Puna Ford, maybe a draft pick, Al Woods, and Monet.
And the Shelby addition can't be understated. I mean, he's an actual interior edge rusher. He hovers in that 10 to 15 range of pressure percentage for. Shelby Harris hovers in that like 10 to 15 range pressure percentage for interior defensive linemen. It's like 9% and the tape matches that. I mean, he can corner on guys. He's not like super explosive off the snap, but he can work to the corner on guards and he can just bull rush guys and counter inside. And he can do it like he doesn't have to be revved up for it. It doesn't have to be a pass situation. I mean, he can read run and then realize that they're pass setting, and then he can just work into his bull rush and just get pressure. Tops the pocket. And then if you've got a guy where they respect his bull rush, then that opens up more by way of twists and pressures and blitzes and stuff too. So
we'll talk about I don't know how we'll do that, but we'll talk about the interior, the defensive line.
That was the preview for the interior.
Yeah. But now I guess the draft, and this is seen as bearing in mind the thresholds, which is more as though they're drafting a Sam linebacker of the past than they're drafting a Leo, especially with how the game's just got lighter in general. But it's nice this draft because there's so many edge rushing options throughout the draft. And also, we were saying off air just before we recorded that it's really pleasant to not have to worry about a guy being too light, because really with how they're doing this with essentially two outside linebacker types, more like looking like that, and also having Taylor already on the roster and Nwosu as an option, they can get a guy who's in the 240-pound, 250-pound mold and put him on one of the edges. And so we're not having to go, he's probably a bit light for Seattle to take that early. Now it's like, yeah, why not? Like he's near 250 pounds. Let's have it. So firstly, is there an edge that you'd stick for at 9 overall? Now, obviously, 9 overall, quarterback, there's other needs. Offensive tackles, low-key a need. Running back, no, I'm just joking, but they might also trade down. But edge-wise, is there an edge you'd stick for at 9?
Yeah, the fun way to frame this, because we're not doing an overall draft episode here. We're just talking edges. So operating within the premise that they have, let's just say there's for whatever reason they have to take an edge at 9. Who are the considerations there? If they can't take quarterback, or if their guy that they like got sniped or whatever, and they got to go edge, you got to stick and pick at 9. You can't trade down, can't find a trade partner. Who are you taking at 9? So in a perfect world, the number one choice is somehow, some way, Thibodeaux falls to 9. I think perfect.
And he's been mocked there.
He has, which I think media members are being gamed right now.
He does, well, talking of gamed, he does like video games, which is obviously a massive concern.
Yeah, you wonder about his work ethic because he plays Fortnite. So like he's the number one option, not just from a talent standpoint. I think he's the best edge rusher in the draft, but then he also just happens, of all the top guys, he's the cleanest fit for outside linebacker. I mean, he's 255 pounds, and he runs like what did he run? A 4.5 something. So like he's Bruce Irvin out in coverage. And then he's got some unreal Von Miller-esque-ish potential rushing the passer. Now he's not going to be Von, but like you're talking about, just a crazy explosive, crazy bendy. He's got hand moves and he's getting better by the day type stuff. He's got production against good teams.
They did drop him out in space a bit as well.
They did drop him out in space, and he played through injury this year. So whatever concerns there might be about supposedly motor or effort, I mean, he played through injury. So if you're seeing less in play, it might be due to that. And then on top of that, if he's playing through injury, I mean, to me, that suggests the opposite of having a poor motor, right? So maybe I need to watch him more in depth to kind of get to the bottom of that. But I mean, he's just the cleanest, like no-brainer pick. If he falls to 9, you probably take him over anybody in the draft, given your needs and given who he is, even if you really super like someone else. him. I don't think Hutch falls. Even if he does, he doesn't fit. So like, say if Hutch is there at 9 for whatever reason, but so is Derek Stingley Jr., then you go corner, I think, there, just because he fits better than Hutch or whoever you like. You know, if there's another spot, I mean, we can get into that. I don't think, I mean, whatever. But point being, I don't think Hutch is an option. If Karlaftis is there at 9, I think Karlaftis is the second best edge rusher. I mean, for me personally, I go Thibodeaux, Karlaftis, Hutch. That's my top 3. I like Karlaftis' potential over Hutch's. So that's where I'm going with that. And he's a year younger. Karlaftis is 265, incredible, crazy speed to power, and he has pretty good bend for his density. His 265, 266 is not like most guys' 265 or so. He's a little bit bulkier, a little bit denser, but he's still crazy explosive. His change of direction is really good. He's got all that. You can drop him. He'll be fine in space. They did drop him a touch. You just would rather not drop him too much. So if you have him out there and he becomes a high snap player, which any number 9 pick hopefully is, you accommodate him by making the other guy, no matter how good they are, they're going to have to drop more. You're still going to drop Karlaftis, but you're going to be closer to that 7 to 10% range than you are that 15 to 20% range like you are with some of these other edges. Again, to put that in perspective, the Rams in base downs, early downs 1 and 2, or even just base personnel, they're dropping Miller like 17% of the time. So like even your favorite pass rusher in a 3-4, your favorite edge rusher is going to be dropped. Karlaftis, though, just by virtue of the fact that he's not fantastic in space, you want him closer to that 10% range. But again, he can still do it and be fine. He can go be a buzz defender if you want him in the flat. Just hopefully he's to the boundary, not to the field.
So, and they have the front mechanics to get that done, and I'm sure they'll layer in more stuff as well. My question with him is, so one concern being a very basic analyst at the moment, but he has 32 and 5/8 of an inch arms. Does that show up in his game? Because obviously the Seahawks, really, they want 33 inches or longer. We should say Thibodeaux meets that. I think Hutchinson does too, but Karlaftis, that's below the threshold. So does he make that arm length work for him? I've seen some nice power from him and a vicious spin move.
So he has no problem landing hands when he wants to power a guy. And because he plays with such great leverage, low hips, low pads, it's not like, I don't know, it's just not a problem for him for the way he rushes. And if what was I going to say? If in the event where like they do land hands on him first, I mean, he has knockdown moves where it doesn't matter. I mean, he's so strong, he just blows through, tackles trying to just lock onto him. It's not an issue for him. I think his bigger issue really is he's still trying to, he simultaneously has incredible balance, but then he's still a little raw in the sense that he's trying to learn how to like coordinate his moves at the top of the arc when he's rounding the corner. And maintain his path on that, because you'll see him like it looks like he has position, and then he'll kind of just retrace and try to work back inside. I'm like, why didn't you just try to bend through that? The thing is, he has all the bend in the world. I mean, he has all the bend you could want for a guy that's 265 at his density. I should clarify. He seems more natural flattening in that context that I just mentioned, rushing off the left side more than the right side. It's more you see more of him retracing when you think he has position off the right side, and that's another variable. You want to keep him on the left more. So there are some, not drawbacks per se, but you're just commenting on his style. I think he's so good at what he does well that he's a surefire number 9 pick. Like, you don't hesitate if you take him.
Interesting.
You just live with him being like, you live with the constraints. You live with not wanting to drop him too much, and you live with him wanting to put him on the left side more. Even with Darrell Taylor, I mean, Taylor's still going to be good off the right. Karlaftis will still be good off the right. You may not be maximizing either with both of them on the field together, mix and matching them, swapping them. They're still going to be both going to be good enough.
Did you watch Karlaftis versus Ohio State? Because I because that seems to be the game where everyone's raising concerns. He got widened by the tackles I've seen, and Ohio State Nicolas Petitfrere, the he's also coming out in this class. He's not regarded as that good a tackle prospect, but apparently he kind of worked Karlaftis. I was interested to see. I haven't watched Karlaftis much. I've just seen a few cut-ups.
So
I didn't think Seattle would have a number 9 pick, and now they do. But I'm working through that. So yeah, did you see that game?
Yeah, that's definitely the game of concern. That if you're gonna exercise any pause over Karlaftis, that would be the game to do it. Now, Ohio State did like dedicate their entire blocking scheme to trying to take him out of the game. So that probably speaks to the respect they had for him and you know, like how good he is in general, right? But the few true one-on-one looks he did have, I was waiting for him to get a win, and he didn't. I think he had like one. So that is concerning. Now, at the same time, though, he also had monster games against other good competition. I mean, he destroyed Notre Dame, like decimated them, both their left and right tackle. So that kind of reinstilled some confidence. If you go watch OSU, but then you go watch Notre Dame, I mean, it's probably how you feel about him might depend on which game you watched first. If you watched OSU first and watched Notre Dame, you probably feel better about him at 9 versus if you watch Notre Dame first and then OSU, you're going,
what came first, like schedule wise?
In the literal timeline? That's a great question. I think Notre Dame came first.
Well, in the meantime, while you're looking that up, you can stew over this while you're looking this up, by the way. I was going to ask you anyway, and this kind of goes into the conversation with number 9, but also just in general with the draft and with the edges. Is there a dream scenario? Is it just Thibodeaux falling, or is there like, hey, they trade back, they get this, and they get this edge at 14 or 17 or whatever? Pick your number.
So the other the other round 1 edges. So there's that first tier, that first cluster: Tibbs, Hutch, Karlaftis. Then the next tier, I think in the first round, is really just 2 guys: is Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State, and then Jermaine Johnson, Florida State. Now, I don't think the distance between that first group, or more so Hutch and Karlaftis, distance between those guys and Ebiketie is huge. It's not like a full round of difference. We're talking like maybe 10 to 20 slots, I think, in the first round. So from a draft efficiency standpoint, and also considering fit, because I did make all these qualifiers about Karlaftis's fit, right? Even though I can still fathom how it works, I think I might prefer trading back into the teens and getting an additional day 2 pick if you can ensure Ebiketie is there in the teens, because Ebiketie is super for all the reasons Thibodeaux is the cleanest fit in the world style wise. So is Ebiketie. It's just that Thibodeaux is just the better version of Ebiketie, but Ebiketie is still a surefire first rounder.
Well, before Ebiketie, let's talk Johnson, because I think the consensus is that he is a better player. Now, I'm just looking, he tested absolutely nuts. He had a 4.58 second 40-yard dash at 254 pounds. He has 34-inch arms, and his 10-yard split was 1.55 seconds, which is in the 97th percentile for defensive ends. And amongst edges, it is still in the 90s. It's in the 97th percentile.
He was also a monster at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. He tore apart the Senior Bowl. I think he ended up not even doing day 3 of practice because of how dominant he was, and obviously missed the game as well. But then you plug in the tape, and he possibly isn't showing the kind of stuff that you'd have expected. He didn't do the agility drills. Not many people did, but his bend wasn't quite there, Griff.
Yeah, linearly, I'm sure, like in measured, drills and stuff, he probably appears explosive and fast and stuff. As a player, he's truly not that bendy. And actually, I was surprised by the more I watched of him, the more I realized he truly isn't that bendy. He doesn't have crazy bend. And then I think he's kind of a speed to power guy with a lot of ability, footwork, like advanced footwork. He knows how to break down tackle sets, make them shorten their steps, make them hunker down for power, and then he can transition to the outside with a good corner move and flatten that way to the quarterback. But he can't manufacture a shorter corner on the tackle with his speed or with his get off and then his bend. It's actually like the classic round one edge rusher traits aren't quite there actually. His play strength is pretty good though, and like I said, his ability to manipulate sets, and he's going to be a guy that is going to win with his hands in the NFL. That's all there. I just don't know how high his ceiling actually is. I don't think he's actually one of these incredibly athletic ceiling type guys. I actually think traits-wise, Ebiketie is working with more traits. And I think that Ebiketie's speed to power even is more impressive than Jermaine Johnson's, accounting for their weight, because Ebiketie tested at 247, 248. Even though he looked bigger than that, but maybe
he did look bigger. And the thing is, though, like 21 reps on the bench, like he clearly, like
he's Ebiketie doesn't have great bend, but he has good bend, and he has he has really good get off.
He was one of the first guys where like I started watching him, was like, this is we said at the start how when you're watching edges, you kind of just watch a few plays and you're like, I like what I'm seeing here. This should translate. You're right. He doesn't have like top bend, but he has bend. And the big thing for me was how fluid he was working inside moves, be it called movement, but also just working the two-way go on a tackle.
Yeah.
Just real fluid, stringing that kind of stuff together, which, okay, he is only 247 pounds, but, you factor that in, he had a 38-inch vertical.
Had a great game versus OSU that Karlaftis didn't.
And interesting, yeah. And 34-inch arms, well, longer than that, actually. And he had a 6.95 second three cone and 4.24 seconds short shuttle. His pro day as well. So
so he the more I watched, and also understandable concerns given that he didn't have a breakout year until his senior year at Penn State. I watched him at Temple before he transferred. I mean, as in I went back and watched his tape, not I remember him at Temple. And he was good at Temple too, showing all the same things. Maybe he just needed the reps to kind of put it all together, but all the traits were there, the ability was there. Maybe just tapped into it more at PSU. But he's a classic, get him in the teens, edge rusher. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
if they do trade back from 9 and their first pick is going to be an edge, then Ebiketie might be the sweet spot of
I think I'm there as well. And the fact he can play in space, he literally was an outside linebacker technically, and he looked good in space as well. And he just seems to be that. I need to watch his Senior Bowl stuff. Actually, I haven't got around to that yet. But
now the thing about Jermaine Johnson, I truly do like him, and he's also a bully against the run too. So he'll endear himself to any fan base just off that alone. He'll make plays and all that stuff. I don't think you want to drop him too much though. And if he's a guy that you're going to say, well, he can drop, but you don't want to drop him too much. He needs to be the Karlaftis level pass rusher, because we make the same statement about Karlaftis and dropping, but Jermaine Johnson isn't going to be as good of a pass rusher as George Karlaftis in the NFL. So Jermaine to me is a classic mid-late 20s edge, and that's where he should go. And then on top of that, he's not the cleanest fit for Seattle. So if you're going to take a guy in the first and he's not going to be top 10 type of guy, at least get the guy that's a fit. And to me, that's Ebiketie. So yeah, that's how I characterize round 1.
And this is, I haven't charted this. I've watched 4 games of his, so bear that in mind. But he seemed to me, his best reps came off the right. Now he can rush off the left as well, but he has that right-left deal again, which we spoke about. So it'd fit with Taylor.
So does Ebiketie, though. Ebiketie actually is like a right side only guy to a point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So, I thought you were talking Jermaine.
No. I was talking Ebiketie. Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
So so right, and so the thing there is, it's kind of so obvious that.
Yeah.
And with the Seahawks, are they ever that obvious? Not really. So they'll probably just take a tackle.
So the funny thing is that for all this deliberating we're doing, in a vein, Ebiketie is the only pick that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And he's the first guy I watched. So
he's the first. He's the only guy that makes sense from ability, scheme fit, and then what's likely to be available to them.
Yeah.
So
anyway, there are. As we said, there are a lot of other options now. Ebiketie in the mocks, the mock simulators, which are very fun, and PFF's one I'm enjoying. There's also Pro Football Network, no free ads. But anyway, 40-41 Ebiketie lasts to. Obviously, Seattle, I'd be surprised if, and we'll do a draft preview, sort of talking vibes and whatnot, what we want, just cut it loose. But 40-41, I'd be surprised if Seattle actually does pick back-to-back. I'm sure they'll try some sort of moving around to hit all the ledges, but of different positions. But Ebiketie's lasting into that range, and I'd really be shocked if he actually does. Like we've said, like late teens of the first round, even late, early 20s maybe if you're lucky. But it would be a shock.
And with, sorry to cut you off, but like Ojabo being the only other guy that is even styled that way,
and he's done his Achilles
with his injury. Like Ebiketie's the only guy to teams that's like, hey, this is a classic speed rusher in the draft. Even if they like Jermaine Johnson, they still want that speed guy, right? Like after Tibbs, it's
he had 9.5 sacks like in 2021.
So, and he played
4 sacks in 2020. So
he played for a high-profile school, so he's on absolutely everybody's radar in the first. He's not getting to 40. He's not getting to 30.
Yeah, like his game against Wisconsin was.
Yeah, so
good.
We'll see.
But anyway, 40-41, Ebiketie unlikely to be there, but there should be other intriguing options still on the board. So I'll just list them. We talked about. You mentioned Ojabo, unfortunate injury, so he probably will be lasting into this area.
So I actually want to ask you guys something real quick about that. Sorry, but considering where the Seahawks are right now, right? I know that they want to be competitive this year, but do you think that maybe considering the spot that they're in right now, where they might not be a playoff team, entices them a bit more to wait a year on someone like Ojabo and use a high pick on him?
I hope not. I mean, I really like Ojabo, Scottish, so we'll claim that as British people are very good at doing with Andy Murray, etc., etc. Let's not get too problematic. But
wait, didn't Scotland just secede from the UK recently?
No, that
or
didn't happen.
Oh, okay.
No, might happen down the line. But anyway, save that for the politics podcast that we're obviously going to do.
You can take their edge rushers, but you can't take their freedom.
Yeah, very nice. But
have you guys seen that documentary on Scottish, on the Scottish English or Norman conflict?
No,
with Mel Gibson. Just kidding. Okay.
So Ojabo, I wouldn't want to take with that kind of risk. Just not even a risk. Well, an Achilles injury is brutal. Obviously, there's that crazy recovery from Cam Akers, but they need like edge is such a need. Like it's ridiculous. Yeah. I'm gonna lose my mind if
he was going to go in the first.
Max.
Here's my thing on him. He was going to go in the first before injury anyway, but he was a second round player. Like I wouldn't take him to the second round anyway.
Well, so that's the other thing. He was getting crazy top 15, like top 10.
It's absurd. Ebiketie is even like Ebiketie's floor versus Ojabo's ceiling. I'm taking Ebiketie all day long.
Ajabo is really he's very raw. He hasn't been playing football that long.
Yeah, I mean he needs time to develop, and he will get better. I just he
is a very talented athlete, but he didn't test like I'm not saying he didn't test well, but he didn't test in the level that it's like this is a absolute once in a generation guy. And he really what happened was everyone was watching Hutchinson. Hutchinson's getting a fair bit of attention, and then suddenly it's like, well, who's this like really athletic looking dude opposite Hutchinson? Oh wow, he's got a cool story. And so anyway, not to beat on Ajabo.
All right, but, really quick before we move on to the day 2 guys, because there's another first rounder that I don't think we're including in this because he just doesn't fit any way, shape, or form. Travon Walker. He's too big to be. I mean, he could do it because he's such a freak athlete.
Yeah,
but he just doesn't fit, and then he's too raw as a pass rusher. He's a total project.
In base in Seattle, I think he'd be inside.
At 270, I mean, he's strong enough to do it.
Like Georgia, in clear passing downs, which is obviously the complete opposite to base, but in clear passing downs, they were lining him up as the
interior guy. Yeah,
the interior guy.
Yeah, so I'm just
flip it, and then
eliminating him from consideration right now. I don't think Seattle's would look at him, even if he was there at whatever.
He's the old school 5 tech.
Yeah, there goes the Michael Bennett types. I mean, not really, but sort of.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so the day 2 guys, the guys that we think are definitely going to be there at 40, 41, and then there are.
So shall I? I'll list them for you, and then you can take it the direction that you want, which I predict will be.
That we want. We're in this together.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
So what I'm saying is, if I'm wrong about a prospect, then I can dispense the responsibility.
No, I get that. And when you're right, I'll
take all the credit. Yeah.
Oh no! I'm not on board with that. Okay, so Nik Bonitto, Boye Mafe, Sam Williams, and Drake Jackson. Now, if you haven't heard someone, that's because they're probably in the later options category. And if we're wrong about that, then write to us, complain. Yeah.
Really quick on Sam Williams, he has a pretty bad red flag. Charges were dropped, but that doesn't mean anything for sexual assault. So I'm just eliminating him from my own consideration. I hope the team is too. He was kind of billed as like a day 2 prospect. I think he was a day 2 athlete, maybe a round 3 or a round 3 player, maybe a round 2 athlete. And that red flag may or may not drop him. I hope Seattle doesn't take him. He's kind of a scheme fit, kind of not.
I mean, he tested absolutely nuts. Like
he did,
4.46, 2.61.
His tape sort of reflects that. But anyway, so just I'm not going to spend.
His tape is a lot of. He's just so fast that he can just run around guys.
Well, yeah, and then even then he's like not coordinated at that at the same time. So he's kind of a mess of a player and not a guy that Seattle needs to touch. So I hope he's not in consideration. But I want to get
someone you have been very fond of is and really puts the bend in bend is Nik Bonitto from Oklahoma.
So of all these day 2 guys, Nik Bonitto is my personal favorite, but I think he's a guy that goes between. He's a guy that needs to go in round 3 because there are concerns over like precedence in terms of like weight, and then if you just because he played at 240, and there are not a lot of 6'3", especially at that density 6'3", 240 guys that project well to the NFL. And then his play strength on base downs. I mean, he tries, the effort's there, but he's 240 getting tossed around at 6'3". It's not like even like when we talked about Aaron Donkor, who's shorter and has density, like Michael Kendricks can set the edge at 240 because the dude's like 5'11". Nik Bonitto's 6'3", 240. But he is and I usually don't like guys like him, especially because he doesn't have a lot of knockdown moves, but I'll get to the point here. I think he can be a guy, especially with your point earlier about how they have base downs covered. You can just bring in passing situations and just be an edge burner. I think he has awesome get off. He has great snap timing. He always times it up. So those two things combined absolutely kill tackles off the jump. And then when he gets into his rip, the reason why I'm not that concerned about his weight on pass downs is because when he gets into his rip, a lot of guys that are super light in college that show all the pizzazz, that get off the speed, the bend, right? A lot of them, when they get into their rip, they're getting ridden off by the tackles. That the tackle's just able to get like their inside hand on the, or really, yeah, their inside hand on the edge rusher's like inside hip, and they just write them off. So if we can contrast him with Myjai Sanders in this class, actually, if Myjai Sanders gets into his rip at 6-7 yards, even 5 yards, but the tackle he doesn't have enough depth on the tackle relative to when he wins position, then the tackle is going to latch onto him and just write him out of the pocket every time. Nik Bonitto can get into his rip at 5, 6, 7 yards, and he can just maintain that depth and flatten and maybe only drift another yard or two down the pocket. I'm like, this guy's 240 and he's not getting ridden off. Now he might lose his balance by the time because he dips under the table. So like, people talk about ghosting. He gets so low, he kind of loses his balance, and maybe that's why he's not getting ridden off, because the tackle isn't actually able to get their hands on him that well. So maybe he's kind of avoiding the contact, and it's not true bend through contact. He's just able to avoid the contact in really short space. But nevertheless, he's getting into his rip and he's not getting ridden off that much or that frequently. So for a guy his size, that's why I put to rest concerns about his weight as a pass rusher.
Yeah,
his weight still prevents him from playing in base so much. Now, that said, he gained weight for the combine. He's up to 248, pushing 250, and he still tested well. The 3-cone wasn't amazing. It was okay. But the 10-yard split was there. The 40 was there. He doesn't have a lot of knockdown moves, but he doesn't need them. He just all speed, pad reduction, get around the tackle, and he doesn't drift. So he's a classic high pressure, third rounder, I think.
His footwork, and how he varies his stride, and also the speed of his feet, that I think helped him a lot. Whereas some guys don't do that, and so they do get ridden off. That weight gain is interesting because, as you said, I'm not sure you could bank on him being able to set the edge against the run, which then excludes him from base downs, because even if they are moving to 3-4 approach, the guy down at the line of scrimmage as the edge defender has to be able to set the edge. Like, that's a fact, especially in base downs. So
now he would do well in coverage, so it's a weird mix there.
It is, yeah. And with all of this kind of uncertainty is probably why he's a 3rd-round pick. But the other thing which you didn't talk about is his arms are only 32.5 inches, and he's good at kind of leaning into guys, right, and getting into that bend and using his lower body. But does the arm
I was going to ask you that because Matty, you brought up Karlaftis's arms. He's got the 32. Bonitto's got 32.5, right? Has that shown up on tape for you?
It might show up in the sense that it might be a result of the fact that he doesn't have a lot of knockdown moves. Might be a result of his arm length not really letting him use them a lot. Now, 32 is not short. It's just not super long, right? And Seattle has a threshold. So it's not like he's got 30-inch arms, which there are edge rushers that have 30-inch arms. And they're like, well, how are they going to project to the NFL? I don't think he's super deficient there. It's just that his rush style, he doesn't get wins with his hands because he doesn't need to. Now, that said, his get off is such that when tackles really panic and want to maintain depth with him because they do not want to let him get the corner on them, they will be moving so fast that they're not in a position to anchor at all or recover at all. And he can convert to power for a light guy at the top of the rush if he reads the tackle moving so quickly trying to keep up with him. They're so off balance. He has some reps where he's converting to power at 7-8 yards, and he's able to work inside off of that. He also has some reps where the tackle tries to go meet him out in space really quickly, and they're putting themselves like on an island with him, and he's actually able to kind of stack them up and snatch them and work to the outside on that. He's got some reps, I think, against Texas Tech where he did that. He can make it work. And Matty, like you said, with his feet, that's actually really important because that's what puts together his entire rush plan. The fact that he can influence sets with his feet and actually work to inside counters, because he knows tackles are going to overset to him to try to match his speed. He works that to his advantage. So yeah, he can get to the inside with his feet. And again, that kind of bend through contact for his weight shows up again, because he'll inside counter, and the tackle will still get a hand on him, but he'll rip with his outside arm now. And he'll still be able to get into the backfield. So I just think he can make it work. It's just he's a third rounder, but a high priority third rounder. And there are third rounders that get drafted pretty frequently that still get you crazy pressure and get a second contract in the NFL. So,
but he's not that premium dude. Like he's not in Ebiketie's league, right?
No,
so no. And they need, in my opinion, and I think you agree, they need to come out of this draft with a disruptive game wrecker. Heck, Clint Hurt said it. That's what they need off the edge.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Ebiketie's like a game wrecker, but
he fits the bill for those purposes. Bonitto is just a guy that you get super excited about in the third round, and that's it.
Yeah.
You're not talking about crazy potential per se.
Mm-hmm.
You're just talking about like what he is right now. You can go trot out and pass downs.
You feel great about him, clearly. We spoke probably the most about Bonitto. Not great about him, sorry, but you love him.
I love him in the third round is how I feel. Yeah. Okay, I would not take him at 40 or 41.
So someone who probably will go 40, 41 or even higher is someone you're not as big on, and someone I didn't really like as much either, which is Minnesota's Boye Mafe. So really quickly, the pitch for him is, he tested crazy. He's 6'4", 257 pounds. He ran a 4.53 second 40-yard dash with a 1.56 seconds 10-yard split, jumped 38 inches in the vertical, and so there you go. But on tape, I did not see that as much, and he's just a weird kind of athlete.
Yeah. On tape, I mean, even when he times his snap, so you wonder, like, some guys test well, they're like, well, the get off didn't seem good, or do they just not jumping the snap well or whatever? Even when he did, he seems like an okay to good athlete, not a great athlete. He is a crazy motor, crazy effort. He's very technical. He has a lot of moves. But to get wins against good tackles, he has to, like, empty the clip. He has to throw everything. He has to button mash. He has to work really hard to get the corner. The guys that project to the NFL better usually are ones that just have the most easy wins, and he doesn't have a lot of easy wins on tackles. So he's getting a lot of round one hype. Even I think he's a high priority round 3 guy. Be excited about him in the third round. I wouldn't take him in the second though, especially.
And he'll go in the second. The one thing that we saw, and what could explain why he's not showing as much as we'd expect from his testing, is that little false step he does. And I don't know if it's like a purposeful false step or not, but if you remember when in the 2-point, he does a weird false step, which is almost to sync up playing the run, but it massively lowers his get off. And so, like, if you're in a 2-point and it's passed, you're suddenly just slowed down because you're false stepping. I didn't get that at all. He can like cover running backs on wheels and stuff because he's a crazy athlete, but he's just unusual. And he also had a 125-inch broad jump, and his arms though were 32 5/8 of an inch long, which obviously is under that 33 inches again.
Yeah.
So
another guy that is similar to him, and we could kind of characterize him similarly, is Drake Jackson. At a USC, Drake Jackson was getting first-round hype. I don't see a first-round player at all. And that was early on. It wasn't like Mafe, who is getting that hype late. Drake Jackson had that hype early, and I just don't see that type of player. I think he has, for a guy that is a speed rusher, he really doesn't have that great bend. And I don't think he's that proficient technique-wise. I think he has great effort. He's okay get off. Like I would take him in the second round. Really, I think he's a little bit better than Mafe, but I think that Mafe is the third round version of Drake Jackson. Then there's another guy, and we'll get into the day 3 guys, Tyreek Smith, who feels like the round 4 version of Mafe. So,
well, the thing, so real quick on Jackson, at least he has those 34-inch long arms.
That's
he
true.
Just seems so raw, like very unfinished.
Yeah.
And inexperienced. A lot of activity, but not much moves. Very busy, but yeah.
So like I think that in a vacuum, Drake Jackson is a better prospect than Nik Bonitto, but I would much rather take Nik Bonitto in the 3rd than Drake Jackson at 40 or 41.
Right. So we just want to trade down all the time, is what we're saying.
So it's really not the ideal spot for like where they are. 10th or 9th at each round is really not the ideal. Actually, 76 gets interesting. 76 is where you're starting to think, oh, value picks, right? That's where Bonitto gets really exciting at 76. That's where Mafe gets exciting at 76, right? Now that said, there could be tackles
even better at 72.
So is it 72?
Yeah,
why am I saying even better? 76? That's awesome. We just traded up. Thank you. So yeah, Nik Bonitto, you get excited about 72. Yeah, so those are the
so what happens is we're going to talk about the draft, but you trade down from 9 to get to sort of 18 and pick up a 70-ish pick, and then you take Ebiketie in those teens. Then you trade down from 41 and you get another 70-ish pick, and yeah, there we go. Then we've got 3 picks.
If you take Ebiketie, if you get Ebiketie, or say someone better than him even, right? Or if you get Karlaftis, or if you even in some freak reality where you get Tibbs, if you get any one of those guys, you probably don't touch edge till day 3 because there are still exciting options day 3.
Yeah. So, and here's the time we can talk about them. So,
all right,
the real
segue.
This is our day 3 segue.
The real exciting ones to me are Kingsley Enagbare, although he tested poorly, but we'll get to him.
But that's what makes him day 3.
Yeah,
because player-wise, he seems better than that, right?
Yeah. Then D'Angelo Malone, who is borderline not day 3, and then Dominique Robinson. Those are the 3 which are sticking out to me and who I've watched. But then you also liked Jeffrey Gunter, and then the guy who probably won't go day 3 because of how actually he might be tested crazy is Amare Barno. Oh, and you like DeMarcus Mitchell as well. So I've just mentioned all of them. Where do you want to go with that?
And I mentioned Tyreek Smith earlier.
Yeah.
So really quick on Tyreek Smith, he is probably of those guys, he's probably the best college edge rusher, just right off the bat, like skilled player and stuff. He's similar to Mafe in that he's got okay traits, or if Mafe has good traits, Tyreek Smith has like just below that, right? But he's lots of skill, lots of technique, lots of effort. I think he's going to be a real source of pressure in the NFL. You can probably drop him. He's not like he's never going to be a number 1 or a number 2, but he can.
Yeah. So his background was as a Sam in Ohio State's defense, which was literally the Seahawks defense. Like they were running the same scheme, like actually copied it, like same terms, everything. And so he was playing that buzz defender curl flat role, reroute curl flat when they were playing base against who was it, Alabama, and he was out to a slot and all that stuff.
I mean,
then
go ahead.
Well, then this year, then they kind of had to move him into I think he was technically playing the Leo. I mean, he wouldn't be the 5 tech, but like you said, he's like a kind of coming out of college. Like he's kind of a technician for college, right? Like he's always trying to hand work. He's got so many like different like attempts at moves and stuff like that. I mean, but he's
the round 4 version of Boye Mafe, like, and that's it. If here as a frame of reference, like if Jacob Martin is a viable edge rusher in the NFL, Tyreek Smith is going to get you pressure in the NFL. Like the pressure rate will be there, and you probably only play him 300 snaps a year, maybe 400. But like get that kind of player in the 4th round, 5 sacks maybe. All right, cool, right?
So I worry about him a bit. Even though what I said about the Sam thing, I do worry a bit about him in space.
Yeah.
I don't think he necessarily has much of the agility. He's kind of, up and down.
So earlier when we talked about how a lot of the depth edge rushers are like crazy athletes in space, right? For a lot of these 3-4 teams, Tyreek is definitely not that. He's more of like the try-hard edge pressure depth guy. So if they're looking for a guy that they have no qualms over dropping and just making that super easy, but you still see some pass rush upside, they just need to be developed. You're getting to those guys that you mentioned earlier, D'Angelo Malone, Dominique Robinson, and Barno, right?
Yep.
And what are your thoughts on those guys?
Well, Barno, I don't understand. I mean, I heard from, oh, I'll call them a source, but it's really a friend. Owen Reese, he scouted for the College Gridiron Showcase, the Shrine Bowl. He was responsible for the, I should know this. What's Virginia Tech in? Is it the ACC or is it the AAC? I think it's the ACC, and I'm probably wrong. Anyway, and he said in November to me that Barno was like the guy to look for because he's going to test absolutely crazy. And lo and behold, Owen knows what he's talking about, and my top secret source, and he did test absolutely nuts. Like, and when he got into. No, I don't think he's going to last into this point. But if you're getting into the range of the draft where suddenly it's, it's going to be, day 3 and you're getting an athlete like Barno where he runs a 4.36 seconds, 40-yard dash, jumps 37 inches in the vertical, 131 inches in the broad, and, is 239 pounds and 6'6", then you're like, okay, well, that is that activity kind of guy you're talking about, Griffin, where, okay, they may not be the best pass rusher, but they bring a lot to the table in terms of activity and playmaking, and he's got the athletic traits to do that. However, the tape, I just didn't.
So and I agree. I don't think, not to be harsh, but I don't think there's anything there with Barno. Now, what's the funny thing is that Malone is like on paper all the same things, but just a good player. So D'Angelo Malone is like, you look at Barnum like, so what would you say you do here if you've got Malone standing right next to him, right? Like Malone actually makes plays in space. He's a good run defender for his, height, weight, speed. I mean, he's a really tall, lanky guy, but he kind of has a wiry strength to him. He's absurdly explosive, absurdly bendy. You're only going to rush him when you like have to, because you put him on the field and you have to rush a guy, or it's like 3rd and forever. But the traits are so like the drawbacks in pass rush is that he doesn't have the weight. He's just going to bounce around. But a guy like that is so crazy explosive. He's going to pop every so many rushes, right? It's just going to happen because the traits will apply. It's a guy like on the 5th round or whatever, 4th round, maybe you take whatever pass rusher you can get, but you're just excited about him being on your depth chart, really, right?
Yeah, and he flashed a few things at the Senior Bowl. His cornering and like his hand usage is kind of there, like ish. And it's a shame, and I haven't been able to find his pro day numbers. Western Kentucky's pro days happened, but I haven't been able to find them. But at the combine, he didn't do any of the drills other than 23 reps on the bench press, so we don't see the athletic confirmation you'd like. Then again, that might mean that he is, still available in this day 3 range, but he's only 243 pounds. So he's like that kind of Bonitto option, right? In the sense that he's like, like a lesser Bonitto option, like a ledge below Bonitto, right? But in the same role that,
that said though, he's probably a better pure like field athlete, space athlete than Bonitto. Like,
interesting.
With the dropping and the stringing out jet sweeps and stringing out outside zone and tosses and stuff. I mean, he's just going to make like stupid plays in space because he's just running around being long as hell and all that stuff, right? Bonitto is like truly like a rush specialist. He'll still do some stuff, high effort stuff in pursuit and all that. But
I should say also to that point, Malone at the Senior Bowl, I think, was 234 pounds. So he got his weight up for the combine. So really his playing weight's more 230s. So athleticism in space, like he's much more of that dropper than Bonitto.
He put all his weight on though in his upper body. So it's like fake weight in the sense of for a defensive lineman where you think about anchor and play strength, you're getting your power through your legs.
He drank lots of water.
And he drank lots of water. I mean, good for him. I mean, it's not bro hate. Good for him. Like,
and he does have those 33 and an eighth inch long arms. So he's meeting.
So I mean, if they take him in day 3, it's like cool. They got D'Angelo, right?
Yeah.
So the other guy, Dominique Robinson, of all these late round guys, he's the most classically built, classically styled edge rushers that might actually have something down in, down out as an edge rusher. Like his density, I think he's 6'3", 245.
I think he was. I think he's actually 6'4", 256.
Oh, is he? Oh, wow. So
yeah,
even more to the point. I mean, he's got the composition. He has get off, and he actually tries moves at the top of the rush, like a lot of like club rip, like straight up club rip, while he's moving as fast as he can up the arc. Like if you think about like a club move versus a swipe move, you're using so much rotational power with a club move. It's hard to do that when you're trying to move as fast as you can upfield. That's when you see most of it when you're rushing like a power path at the guy, like you already have your hips turned to tackle. He can do it while he's still gaining depth upfield. So that's kind of speaks to his coordination. The thing with him is that he's not he played for Miami, Ohio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's not a high profile team, and he's not getting a lot of like clean pass rush reps. Like they had a lot of guys similar to him in terms of like they just cycle in edges, and he wasn't getting a lot of like pure edge rush reps. If you distill it down, you can probably put together like a good cut up of him of like, hey, he might actually be an edge rusher. It's just the body of work isn't there. That's why he's a day 3 guy. But I think of those guys, he's the most viable like floor and still has a really good ceiling.
Yeah. And he's someone I could definitely see, just given the size and what you've just spoke about in terms of being more of like a down lineman, right?
He's a good run defender too. For his
weight.
Weight.
Exactly right. He held up in that.
So,
but also in terms of his testing, like he had a 41-inch vertical jump, 121-inch broad jump, 25 reps on the bench press, 419 seconds short shuttle is pro day. In terms of all that, that's like edging into day 2. So I can see
maybe he will. And if we use going back to Jacob Martin as a frame of reference, now Jacob Martin, speed guy, but not that fast and really not that bendy. He didn't have that much ankle flexibility. But Jacob Martin like maximized himself technique wise.
Mm-hmm.
If Jacob Martin can be a viable edge rusher in the NFL, which he has good pressure, okay pressure, then Dominique Robinson, you can certainly fashion an argument for him ascending eventually, so if given the opportunities. So
the guy who I really liked on tape and I didn't understand his combine was South Carolina's Kingsley Enagbare. And he was the guy I watched and was like, Drift, like this guy could be the guy, because you again, that kind of thing. You watch the first few reps. I'd seen at the Senior Bowl, he had almost 35-inch arms. He was 6'4", he's 258 pounds at the combine. He had the size, and he had, to me, I was thinking in those Seahawks terms of get off first and foremost, and he had get off. He had first step quickness. He wasn't necessarily snap jumping, but you do the thing of pause it after the snap. Who's off the line first? Kingsley. All the time it's Kingsley. Now, South Carolina may have had a trash defensive line. I don't think so, really. He was beating tackles out of their sets, with his get off. But then you get to the testing, and he runs a 4.87 40-yard dash with what I believe was a slow as hell 10-yard split. I think it was in the 1.7s. I can't remember. I can't find it. But anyway, it was a slow 40 on what was meant to be and was a fast track. He had a vertical jump of 36.5 inches and a broad jump of 117 inches, which is a bit more like it. But it was just weird to me that he didn't have that get off. And then I'm seeing some scouts are like, hey, he doesn't really have explosion. And I guess I didn't really see, like, he had a first step, but I didn't really see that kind of tie into second, third, fourth steps around the arc. I actually didn't see that speed either. And, you know, the more I watched, I was like, well, he's not really doing this against you know, he's not winning against the SEC tackles with his speed rush. His best game was against East Carolina, which, you know, level of comp concern. And then I don't know, he's just a weird kind of player. Like,
he's a weird athlete.
Some players do just test bad. But I mean, he showed some nice bend, but against East Carolina. And
so traits wise on tape, he seems to be all over the place. And you kind of use the word like clumsy too, and you almost wonder if he's more athletic than he is because he just needs game reps to kind of piece it all together. I don't. But he's a guy that wants to use his hands, but he just isn't experienced enough and developed enough yet there either. But he's a guy that projects toward maybe getting better at it. And like you combine that with like some traits being there, like maybe like the jumps are there on tape. He kind of has a weird suddenness to him. Like he's at the same time like physically capable, but then clumsy at the same time. Like he looks coordinated, yet then he'll look clumsy again. It's very odd. And you almost wonder if it's just like he needs to build up the muscle memory and stuff, like the football movements, and that like maybe it's just an inevitability. You also wonder if he like just didn't do 40-yard sprint training and he doesn't know how to do that, and maybe he killed his 40 time.
The other thing with the clumsy movements, like against the run, he's like all over the place. Like when it comes to like in their defense, they're calling for him to like wrong arm or spill counter. He's like he's like sort of stumbling into it. Yeah, I forgot what I said about the clumsy thing. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Like, right, but then they clearly think he's their dog because like they're using him as like the spinner in odd fronts and trying to get him one-on-one with the back, and he looks like exciting. And it's like, damn, this guy's the dude. And then it's like, is he though? And then you come back to the testing, and
so he's just a weird guy. But if he's there in the 4th or 5th round, he should be like a high priority.
You like him, you know, you like him in interviews and stuff. But it's not just me. Like before he tested, like Joe Marino of the Draft Network, I'm just reading his report. He's comped him to Darrell Taylor. Now I don't really like comps, but like it's like okay, like it's not just me who was seeing that he had first step explosion.
Yeah,
I'm confused by that. But
I just don't see the Taylor comp. But I understand like there's traits there. The traits show.
Yeah, I don't know.
So he's a weird player, but like, you know.
He's the kind of player where I was like, did he, you know, is he an unusual case where he just his parents hated football, say, and they didn't let him play football until he was 18? And it's like, nope, it wasn't like that. He's played football his whole life, like most of these players. Like I don't know. Odd.
Maybe he just needs I don't know, maybe he needs Clint Hurt to teach him how to play football better. I don't know. But yeah, so you take him there, and another guy where you're not bricking it if you're dropping him in a pinch. So the last two guys of any note, and we'll do this quickly. DeMarcus Mitchell, who is George Karlaftis's partner in crime at Purdue. He was a name I did not hear like anything of, and maybe that's on me, but like I went and like Google searched him and searched him on Twitter and stuff, and like he still doesn't come up a lot. So like I didn't just like gloss over his name. Like he barely is mentioned. He's a classic like hand in dirt edge rusher, but you can stand him up if you want. Purdue did stand him up. What am I talking about? He did both. Can rush both sides, get off and speed to power, He's explosive. He's just kind of a bully. He's got some moves. Like he tries some really wonky, like he'll try like the fake spin and it kind of works. It's like he tries all these things. He's just not completely fluid or coordinated, but like he's just comes out so hot, and he plays with so much like passive strength and active strength and power. It's like he can just overwhelm tackles. So I don't know if I watched him and I hadn't heard anything about him, I would have assumed, no, I could see him going in the 3rd round. But with the lack of, I guess, production wasn't there, like counting stats weren't there. And maybe he was overshadowed by Karlaftis, although that's weird because Ojabo benefited from Hutchinson getting a lot of attention. So I don't know. It's all weird to me. Maybe he's a round 4 guy. Maybe he's a round 5 guy. But if he's there, he's another quote unquote
sounds like he needs an agent.
Priority day 3 guy. Sounds like what now?
He needs an agent.
Yeah.
That's very unusual that there's not much said about him. I'd be interested what he did at his pro day, actually, because he wasn't invited to the combine. He, like you said, he didn't get much buzz at all. He's listed at 6'2" in the 250s. So again, like you said, it's kind of that perfect fit of like
he shows up versus Notre Dame. So it's not, he shows up against a real competition. So I don't know what's going on there. Like, I don't know if there are red flags that haven't surfaced or something, but he seems like a real player.
Yeah, you search for him on Twitter and it's literally you.
That's hilarious. He's the only day 3 guy that has traits and skill ready to go. So I don't, and tape, you know what I mean? Like all 3 combined. Like Dominique Robinson has traits and skill, but he doesn't have enough tape just because he was in such a weird situation. But then even I think I might like Mitchell's traits more just because the power is there. Because speed rushers need to have power if they're going to actually be good speed rushers. Otherwise, you might as well just blitz like a nickel corner every time, right? So, like he can throw his weight around at 250, 255.
Right.
But so might Robinson. Anyway, I'm not trying to go in circles here. So those are the day 3 guys: Enigbari, Tyreek Smith, DeMarcus Mitchell, Robinson, Malone. There are other edges in this class that are weird tweeners that don't fit them that are good. Round 3 guys: Isaiah Thomas, Michael Clemens. I don't think Seattle will look at them. And I think that's it.
Jeffrey Gunter.
Shoot.
Yeah.
He can rush from it. Oh yeah. I don't think we like Lukita, do we?
No. He doesn't. He can't rush.
Player. Gunter is another. Gunter's kind of like Enigbari in that it's kind of traitsy, kind of not, kind of clumsy, kind of coordinated. He can corner hard. He can power guys and work inside. He can rush from a 2-point, although I don't know if you want to drop him too much. He can drop in a pinch, but there are some guys that you don't actually drop that prefer rush standing up. Like in the NFL, there's always some guys like that, like 3-4 schemes where they just don't rush the guy and they just make it work elsewhere. But whatever. I like Gunter. I just like him on day 3.
122-inch broad jump. That's something.
That shows up on tape. Now, there's a true freshman for Coastal Carolina that looks like a future like top 5 pick that shows up Gunter like crazy. It's like an 18-year-old making Gunter look like an old decrepit man. I still like Gunter, but just saying, like whoever this guy is, he's insane. Yeah, there we have it.
There you go. So wait and see in 3 years' time when the Seahawks still don't have an edge. But hopefully they do pick up a few in this draft.
Draft 2. Whatever you do, draft 2.
We've spent a lot of time on it. It's almost 5 a.m. here. Hopefully you've learned something. Griffin doing most of the heavy lifting in this one, little expert that he is. And yeah, please do like this on YouTube, or leave a review on your podcast listening medium, and retweet it on Twitter. Share it amongst your friends, family, whatever, and follow Griffin at CMikeSpinMove. Follow Ty at Dane GNZLZ, and follow me at Matty F Brown. We appreciate you. We're enjoying this. We're trying to make it pretty regular, but schedules. The fact it's 5 a.m. here, that kind of deal does sometimes get in the way. But yeah.
And stay tuned for our next episode where Ty and I speak in an English accent the whole time, and Maddie's in an American accent.
Yep.
Do you think we'd expand our audience if we did that?
And then wait about 5 minutes for the Moon Knight pre-show to start as Matty lists his top 50 MCU characters. All right.
And theories. Top 50 MCU theories.
And theories. Yeah. We have an announcement to make, actually. Matty is joining New Rockstars. Bye.